Most welcome. This is the third lecture class. Subscribe. I'm Reverend Father Ribeiro of Kigoma Catholic Diocese, Tanzania. Today we are just looking and asking ourselves, why such a big country like Congo accepted to be colonized by a very small country like Belgium, according to the author Ernest Boniface Makuliro. Here we are just looking, first of all, this is the YouTube University, my new YouTube University channel. It speaks about African matters. It speaks about African social studies. So subscribe if it is the first moment you are just looking or you are just watching this YouTube channel. Father Ribeiro, a Catholic or Roman Catholic priest belonging in Kigoma Catholic Diocese, Tanzania. Subscribe and don't move away from this channel. So we are just asking, why such a big country like Congo accepted to be colonized by a very small country like Belgium? This is $1 million question. Ernest Boniface Makuliro says, you might quickly rush into answering and blaming African chiefs like Chief Mangungo of Msowero, who gave his land to Karl Peters and Germans in the year 1885. That they were ignorant and uncivilized. The way African chiefs were played, manipulated, and outsmarted by Europeans before and during colonialism, it is still the same way currently under the so-called globalization. Africans are outsmarted and agree to continue to be under neo-colonialism despite their geographical size, population, and capabilities. We all remember the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885. It was the conference where African continent was sliced like a loaf of bread and divided into the table among the imperialist powers. They created the rules of the international community, which obviously favored themselves. And guess what African countries had to accept decisions reached in the Berlin Conference. For instance, those early contracts where African chiefs signed with Karl Peters and others were considered as legitimate and legal contracts. You see, it was practically impossible after signing and come back a few days later that you didn't know what you were getting into. In that scenario, African chiefs were completely knocked out based on the technicalities, ended up accepted that they willingly sold their lands, powers, and wealth to the colonial powers, just in exchange with useless items like looking mirrors, clothing, sweets, and so forth. So the African chiefs sold their African land, or they were just exchanging with the different attractive things like metals, not like iron metals, like biscuits, chocolates, and like that. You could see how our African chiefs were still in the lower stage of thinking or of acting, you see. So we can say that if you fast forward to the formation of the United Nations, the Berlin Conference, the League of Nations and the United Nations are all of the same nature. They were created by imperial powers using their culture values, but most importantly, to safeguard their interests, making sure they are not going to fight among themselves at any point. After each African country became independent, joined the United Nations, the organization where rules of the games benefited the major players, in this case, the creators. So that means the Western countries created things which they were benefiting from it. They were benefiting from them. So the African rulers were benefiting from those organizations, those treaties or those agreements, we can say like that. So that is, in any game, if you really want to play and win, you need to well understand the rules of the game. If you are just playing and you don't even know how to score, what is the normal foul, or what kind of foul play makes it penalty? What formation you are playing, and the most important, how many points you get when you win. Or in all Africans in the United Nations and the other organizations and the international communities are just there without knowing the rules of the game. Therefore, they are completely dominated and played. That's why Muammar Gaddafi was one who got a problem. You know, he was given 15 minutes to speak in the UN, but unfortunately enough, he had many things to present against the Western and America at large. And luckily enough, Muammar Gaddafi, the leader of revolution in Libya, was knocked out. He spent more than 90 minutes rather than instead of 15 minutes, you see. Yeah. So Robert Mugabe used to say that we come here to eat bread and water, then we turn back Africa with the whole speeches which we have received from UN, you see. So subscribe please this channel, be inspired. We have a lot of things to speak or to present, you see. So he speaks. I usually don't get surprised when you see African countries as signatories of even things which don't make sense in the environment of context. A very vivid example in the International Criminal Court, ICC, the United States, China, Qatar, India, Libya, Yemen, and Israel are not the member of the ICC. Unfortunately, many African leaders, scholars, and citizens see ICC are the only tool to target Africans. You see, why did the African countries jump in and decide it while they see the United States refusing for fearing their leaders to be taken to ICC? Why have you ever heard the leaders of from United States of America or any leader from Western countries is being sued to the court of ICC? No. Why can't Africans have their proper African Union court, which will take them, which will be the one to judge their faults whenever the problems arise? Why do African leaders put or are taken in the ICC courts? Why? Unfortunately, many African leaders, scholars, and citizens see ICC are the only tool to target Africans. So that is the thing, the reality, that it seems the ICC was created for Africans only and not Europeans. You see, this is critical. So this is a Libe YouTube University. So you will get different lectures on African issues, African major issues, African major events. You will get African lifestyle. So this YouTube, the channel itself, if you visit it, because I have 4 channels of YouTube, so I'm free to send them in any channel. So the YouTube you are just looking, this is a Libe Media. So Libe Media comprises Libe TZ, Libe Save the Nature, and the Libe English, Swahili, Arabic, French languages. So I'm free to use what are mine. So you can just find these in either of those channels. Why did the African countries jumped in and decided it? Why they see the United States refusing for fearing their leaders to be taken to ICC? Does that mean it's okay for for other countries to be taken to ICC. Despite the movement of trying to leave the ICC, Burundi, South Africa, and a few other countries have failed to do so due to the process created beforehand. I believe this is one of the reasons for future African leaders, before signing any contract, to read the fine prints and understand everything in the contract. Sometimes the African leaders do sign different contracts with the Chinese, with the Americans, with the Europeans, while our fellow African leaders are drunkard or are being fed by food, good food in big hotels and other things. This is the shape of Africa. So I'm just talking with the Africa at large, Africa as a continent, Africa as our fellow people. How do we take things? Are we serious with our African countries? So there are so many bilateral agreements where Africans are completely humiliated and exploited. They just sign agreements and they wake up when the issue, when the issued in the international courts, and ended up paying penalties for ending contracts or change of anything. So sometimes we African leaders do sign different contracts on behalf of our people, while we haven't even know the conditions, the sine qua non conditions for the contracts themselves. So sometimes we do sign what we don't know, that is according to the author of this book. So that is, what is the International Criminal Court? Is that a court special for Africans leaders? Have you ever heard that big men in America, big men in Europe or China are put in this ICC, International Criminal Court? Is the International Criminal Court created for Africans? Subscribe, don't move away from this channel. Be inspired, and we are together. Watch another lecture.